So today I want to talk about the question, is a data science team needed? And this is a question I faced throughout my career as a data scientist. Before that, I want to dive into a quick background about myself. I was born and raised in Montgomery County. Most of my life story can be summarized by this map of Maryland. I went to College Park, Terps, computer science undergrad there. As mentioned, went to the NSA, was there for 7 years. That's where I got my exposure into data science. I worked on big cloud computing technologies, Java MapReduce at the time, Mahout, Pig, some throwback. Hopefully that resonates with some people in this room. While at the NSA, I got my master's degree here at UMBC. Actually had classes in this building, so it's kind of a throwback to be here. Left the NSA, went to Marriott International. At Marriott, they were going through a cloud transformation, and as part of that cloud transformation, they wanted to make sure they could show business value. As part of showing business value, they were expanding their data science capabilities, and that was one way they could generate revenue to justify the cost for their transformation that they were going under. At my time at Marriott International, I was working on digital projects, marketing projects, NLP type projects. I then finally landed at Total Wine, director of data science there. We build machine learning AI models for Total Wine across the whole different department. For those that don't know, Total Wine & More is an alcohol beverage retailer. When you join Total Wine, they put you in a manager training. So I've gone through the manager training to be a store manager, which is an interesting experience. I'm not made for retail, I'm made for data science. When I was there, a lot of times, how customers described it was they walked in and they were like, I'm a kid in a candy shop. For those that haven't been to Total Wine, it's a large box retailer. It's an assortment retailer, meaning they have tons of different SKUs of items. All alcohol beverage, there's 10,000 plus items in each store. There are 250 stores throughout the United States. 2 of them are here in Maryland, one in Towson and another in Laurel, Maryland. If you haven't been, highly recommend going. So a common question I've faced in my career is a data science team needed? What I want to talk about today is tactics that I deploy with my teams to make sure we're not being asked this question, is a data science team needed? Prior to doing that, I think it's important to address why are people asking this question, is a data science team needed? To me, it boils down to 3 different things. The first one is timeline. So business tends to have very tight timelines. They want to be able to deliver, iterate quickly. COVID happened. The environment was constantly changing. We needed to update models and evolve as the environment was evolving. And data scientists tend to need to take time to explore, build different models. So there was a conflict of interest from a time perspective of delivering on a particular timeline. The second is they didn't know what data science is. To me, the data science term is broad. We've heard presentations today about BI and reporting, advanced techniques from p-hacking, et cetera. There's a wide spectrum of data science, and I think that causes some confusion on our business stakeholders as to what is data science. When I'm thinking of data science, I'm thinking of machine learning, AI type models, but that's not always the case. It could be insights and analysis and other things. And the third is a sense of loss of control. So when we've been deploying these machine learning AI models for the business, it tends to be taking over a function that they have historically done. Generative AI is a hot topic in the space I'm working in, and the business is looking to understand how can they use generative AI. And I think generative AI is amplifying the sense of loss of control. I put a picture up here, and I did a text to image prompt, and it said, someone asking the question, is a data science team needed? And this was the image that it outputted. So good, bad, you can interpret what data appends is. But at the end of the day, this can be applied to places like content marketing, creating images for marketing campaigns. And it's a sense of loss of control for our business stakeholders of, hey, this is something that I normally did. I know how I did it. I was able to understand it. But now you're taking it and abstracting it from me, taking it outside of my organization, and now I don't have control, which is causing them to ask, is a data science team needed? So I'm going to go through 3 different areas where I structure my data science team, or think of structuring my data science teams in order to make sure we're not being asked this question. The first is around people. To me, it always starts with people. I've always said you give smart people the tools and capabilities, they're going to produce something great. And I'm a firm believer of that, and that's why I'm starting with people. I break people into your team, your leadership, and your stakeholders. So for your team, the point I want to make real quickly is around structuring your team with the right skill sets for the problems you have. We have a demand forecasting problem at Total Wine where we have to do forecasting of time series, and with that, I need someone specialized in that area. That problem also has a high engineering focused component to it because it's large scale, a lot of data, a lot of computation, so I need data engineers with that. There are other problems that we have that are more statistics, visualization, communication. So you have to look at your projects and make sure that, of the wide spectrum of data scientists, are you picking the right people for these projects, hiring to complement the people that you already have available. For your leadership and your stakeholders, I want to talk through an example that you address these through an example that we have at Total Wine & More, product recommendation. Product recommendation at Total Wine is no different than any other company. It's not a unique problem, but want to talk about how do we talk about product recommendation to these 2 groups of people. So product recommendation at Total Wine, I break it down into, first, the data that we have is pretty unique for this problem set. Alcohol, beverage, wine, spirits, beer, we have tons of data. We have transaction data, we have digital data, we have taste profiles, we have expert recommendations, we have all sorts of different things available to make these recommendations. Inventory levels is another one. How much inventory, how able are we to get to this product? And all of this feeds into our product recommendation system. With our product recommendation system, it boils down to 3 different questions that need to be answered. You have a given bottle. What's another bottle like it? I have Meiomi. Calavita is the comp to it. I have a customer. What bottle should I recommend them? And I have a customer and a bottle. What should I recommend them? So those are the 3 bases of our product recommendation. Those are the 3 underlying themes of how we need to generate product recommendation. With that, we use it in tons of different areas. So it's foundational in our digital platform. So you go on to totalwine.com. The top banner you'll see is we think you'll like if you're logged in, and we're using your transaction history and all these things in order to give you a recommendation. We also use it in non-customer facing areas, assortment planning. Do we have the right products at our store? Where are the gaps in our products? And in order to fill those gaps to make sure we have a large assortment, so when you walk into our store, you feel like that kid in the candy shop. Cannibalization from a supply chain demand forecasting scenario. We're forecasting demand, and if something goes on promotion, we see a spike in sales. But with that spike in sales, there are other items that are going to see a dip. So how do we know which items are going to be spiking and dipping based off of what we're putting in, and how can that impact our demand? So product recommendation has tons of different applications at Total Wine. And what we do, and when talking with our leadership, is say, hey, product recommendation, we want to build this. It's great, it's a cool data science problem. Here's how it applies to the various different business functions. So supply chain, it helps with cannibalization. Driving customer engagement. Better recommendations lead to more engaged customers. Improving digital conversion. We serve better recommendations. It will help digital's conversion. So when we're talking to our leadership, we're tying this project to the key initiatives that the business has and saying, how are we helping with that? Stakeholders. So at the end of the day, stakeholders for this type of thing would be the supply chain team or digital, and we're trying to convince them what we have is good for them to use. What we found successful when talking about product recommendation is breaking it up into two parts. The first part on the right-hand side, you'll see what we call the eye test. And we're just pulling up and saying, here are recommendations. Typically, we go into a meeting, and I have looked at that person's transaction history, if they like it or not. I know what they've purchased, and we're generating recommendations, and when we're going into the meeting, we actually have their recommendations that would be shown. So it's very personalized in each one of those meetings that I can say, hey, here's your actual recommendations. I know you bought teeter-totter last Friday, and if you like that teeter-totter, here are 3 other items like it. When we have that conversation, it's great because they can relate to it, they understand it because it's themselves, and then it spurs a lot of different conversations. Well, I didn't necessarily like teeter-totter. I wanted something more fruity or more dry. Well, how does that come out in the recommendation? And it spurs that conversation. So the first thing we tend to do when we're talking about product recommendations and our stakeholders is explaining it to them in a very simple term of, here is an eyeball, what we call the eyeball test, but here's how it would look for you. The second thing that we do is draw pretty graphs. Scatter plots, the technique we used, embeddings. For those that don't know, embeddings are just a vector representation of products. Each of these dots here represent one of our products. We have tons and tons of products. On the left-hand side, you'll see all of our cab sav products represented on 2-dimensional space. Our embeddings are much bigger than that, but we're putting it down on 2-dimensional space. And we can say, hey, look, we've graphed this on 2-dimensional space, and we're highlighting price in this example. And you can see as price changes, the grouping kind of evolves. So the lower half is items under $20, then it goes up to items over $500, and you can start seeing the groupings of price, and they start getting comfortable with this. The next chart you see is taking all of our wines and coloring them by category. So Total Wine has their own classification of category, and it's interesting, and we can talk to our business partners through this, kind of highlighting different things. So for instance, on the left-hand side, there's a light green, dark green, and a blue color. Those are all white wines. Pinot Grigio, Chard, and another white wine that I'm blanking on. Sauvignon Blanc, thank you, whoever said that. That's exactly what it is. I get to talk about alcohol all day, it's great. On the right-hand side, all the way over, you'll see a brown, a green, and a blue color clustered together. That clustering is all Italian wines, and we break out Italian between Italian red, Italian white, and then we have Italian, which tends to be just bubblies like Prosecco. So all the Italian wines are there, and you can kind of see reds are together and the bubblies are together, but they're all clustered together. At the top of the graph, you'll see local wines. So a local wine would be, in Virginia, there's tons of wineries. We may buy some of the wines from Virginia and sell them in our Virginia stores only. And those clusters, if you start diving into those clusters, are the localized wines to particular, not major regions. You're not your France's or your Napa Valley or your Sonomas, but more localized to a Virginia type region. So when we're talking to our stakeholders, we're trying to break it down to them very simply, get them comfortable with our recommendations through both visualizations and showing them what recommendations for them would look like. The next area I want to talk about is technology. So I said that when people are asking the question, is the data science team needed? One of the points was around timeline and a conflict that is the data scientists need longer than the business needs, and the business wants very agile stuff. All 3 of these points that I have up here, feature catalog, AutoML, and system integrations, are to address that timeline. This is mainly focused around making sure your teams have the capabilities so that they can develop and deploy quickly to make sure they're meeting the business timelines. Feature catalog. We've all seen infographics of the vast amount of tool sets that are available in the data science world. Feature catalog sometimes is its own. It's incorporated into other tools. You don't have to go out and buy a feature catalog. It can be something very simple. What I do with my teams is for a feature catalog, I say, hey, what are the common questions or features that we're using across our projects? So for Total Wine & More, amount of transactions in the last year. Are they a wine customer or are they a spirit customer? Are they emailable? When's the last time they used the mobile app? Are they a discount shopper? So are they using our promotions all the time, every time they shop? Or are they a high-end customer and buying $200 plus bottles of wine when they come in? Those are common features, no matter the problem that we're working on, that come up over and over. And if your company or your organization doesn't have the money or resources to invest in a feature catalog, it can be something as simple as just putting everything on GitHub and having common ways to access this data. Just by doing that small step, making sure it's centralized, making sure that the data is being accessed correctly, making sure that people don't have to reinvent the wheel, saves tons amount of time. So putting a feature catalog is something I think every data science team needs to do. AutoML. I love AutoML, and it's really funny because every time I talk to my team about AutoML, they kind of have the same reaction as this conversation. Do we really need AutoML? I can build it in XGBoost and Python by myself. Does AutoML really give me that much value? And they kind of push back on AutoML, which is really interesting to me of like, it's such a hard thing for data scientists to accept or to use. I would say in my career, I've had a lot of success with AutoML. I use AutoML for two main reasons. One is to baseline, and the other is to solve simple problems. So baselining, what I mean is when I talk about baselining, it really comes down to one of two things. I don't know how well machine learning can do. So take the example for demand forecasting. Total Wine has the problem of how much demand, how many units are we going to sell at the weekly level for every item store combination 104 weeks out. And that is a lot of different time series that we have to generate. They have an approach that has allowed them to grow to 250 stores. That works well. But the question becomes, how much can machine learning help us? I don't know that answer off the top of my head. I can do a lot of research and tests. What we did is just put in AutoML and see, what does AutoML do? How does it do with demand forecasting? I can then start saying, okay, it built this forecast. This is an actual example of one of our items. I think this is actually teeter-totter for one of our stores. We can look at it and say, okay, it's doing well here. It's not doing well here. We think we can get this type of lift. All it's doing is helping me baseline and understand a problem that I may not be familiar with, solving that problem, and giving me a simple solution to that problem. It doesn't mean that we're going to deploy this AutoML. We're building and enhancing and building our own stuff, but it gives us an understanding of what should we target and how much do we think we can do better than that. The second part where we use AutoML is simple problems. I put simple in quotes of the 80% solution works. I don't need to build the most perfect model for churn. Churn is a problem that Total Wine has. We market to people that we think are going to churn. If I send an extra flyer out to somebody because we think they're going to churn, the world doesn't end. They just get discounted alcohol. Everyone's happy. So think about your problem. Think about how well do you need the solution to be. And based off of that, you can say, hey, AutoML may help us. End system integrations. So speed to market, this is kind of an oxymoron because What I'm going to say is the first time that you deploy something to an end system, spend longer time. So I'm saying speed up stuff, but now I'm telling you to slow it down. The reason I'm doing that is for end system integrations, one of the hardest parts I've seen when deploying these machine learning AI models is integrating them into the end systems. So it's how do I deploy it to digital? How do I actually send the email? How do I get the flyer out in direct mail? How do I integrate it into our supply chain system? That tends to be the hardest part. When you are doing these problems, you need to think through and say, is this something that needs to be extensible? And if you think you're going to do another problem in this space or need to activate another thing, it may be a year from now, but go ahead and do that. Take the time and make it extensible to use. An example of this in our space was we have an email platform, and the email platform allows the marketers to segment our data to then say, hey, this is who should get this email versus another. The first integration that we did, we're sending one signal to that. But I know at the end of the day, I don't want to just send one signal. I want to send 5, 6, 10 signals based off of the evolving requirements and how things change in the environment. So instead of making the solution just for that one thing, I'm building it out and saying, hey, it needs to be able to support this wide spectrum. When I deploy something to digital, the first time deploying something to digital, is the API architecture repeatable? If I stand up another API, is it just a repeatable pattern? All the architectures, all the security people are happy, and we don't have to go through all those hurdles. So spend the time up front when you're integrating with a system that you think you'll end up doing again. Spend the time to validate that whatever you're creating is going to be a quicker path to activation the next time you do it. The next part I want to talk about is process. To me, process breaks down into 3 different things. The first one, project selection. Second, product support. And last, external communication. Project selection, I won't bore you with the typical, what are the business requirements? How can I meet those business requirements? What is the cost versus the benefit, et cetera. I think, when you have a business lens, everybody will be able to capture and do that. What I want to talk about is something nuanced that I do with my teams around project selection, and that's creating a side project for our teams. I create side projects for our teams to help retain our talent, and then also to give exposure of different capabilities that our team can do. So data scientists love to work on hard problems. I have people working on demand forecasting all year long. And what I found is if they're working on demand forecasting all year long, they're kind of getting bored and kind of getting antsy to try different things. So this is a mechanism for me to give them exposure to different things to help retain this talent that we have. It also helps to highlight different capabilities. You're there and we're working on the key initiatives and, kind of saying, hey, here's all the key initiatives and this is what we're doing against them. But this is then also saying, here's different exposure that we can have in different business areas. These projects down the road could be what is the next key initiative, and you can help persuade your leadership that, hey, we've done a prototype, this is a good area that we think we should go into. 2 examples of that. One is at Marriott, one's at Total Wine. Marriott, the pandemic happened. And when the pandemic happened, the hotel business changed dramatically. No one was staying at hotels, everybody was staying in their house. When the people were traveling, they were traveling to the Airbnb model where you're renting a home, that more confined environment. With that being said, Airbnb, Marriott has an Airbnb competitor called Homes and Villas. So you can go and rent a house at a beach place, and It's just Marriott's version of Airbnb. The pandemic happens, this explodes. They want to bring on tons more properties and bring on all these different properties to give this as an offering so people can, book through Marriott in order to do this. When they were doing it, they were bringing on thousands of properties every single week. And with that, the use case that we had was when they were bringing on all of these properties, it was a very manual process. So a lot of it was like taking data, copy and pasting it into the Marriott systems so that it could be booked and managed through the Marriott booking system. One of the areas was title generation. So when they were bringing on the properties, they had a description and images, but they didn't have a title. So they had a lot of humans reading all the descriptions, looking through the photos, and then coming up with some type of creative way of generating, they were coming up with their own title for this property. And a lot of them got very creative. It was very fun to read through some of them. We took this as a side project for our team, and it wasn't a commitment that we made, but it was allowed us to explore a different area of NLP. We talked about exploring image processing, kind of using the images themselves and saying, hey, this is a beach house, or this looks more modern or more historical as part of it, but we didn't get into that. We only did NLP, and we focused on how can we generate titles based off of the descriptions that we had, and we applied 2 different techniques. One, which was our baseline, so it wasn't AutoML, but we tend to like to create a baseline, create something simple, and then build on top of that. And the baseline example was taking the text and parsing out the text and just entering in text from and creating the title based off the text of the description based off of a pattern. So it would be like adjective, property type, description of an amenity at the property. So luxury beach house with pool and spa. And we were just parsing the text and creating a title in that format for all of it. And it does well, and you can create a title and parse the text and enter it in. Then the second approach we used was BERT, and was able to generate titles through that approach. Both techniques worked, both were valid. And the process that we talked with the business of was, hey, well, why don't we give you 3 or 4 different examples, and with those 3 or 4 different examples, you can select what you think's best. So it lowers the cognitive thinking that they have to do, lowers the time, but also gives some power into the humans to make that decision of like, oh, this doesn't work, it should be this. The second, Total Wine & More. How many people have been to Total Wine? Just out of curiosity. Okay, a fair amount of people. So if you've walked into a Total Wine store, there's tons of boxes up top. It's kind of like a Costco or a Sam's Club. It has more of a warehouse feel, I would say, to it. Those boxes up top are all of the cases that we're storing at the retail store. Those boxes are a mess in the sense that you don't know where anything is. So having worked in the store for 2 or 3 weeks, the biggest headache is when a customer, if you want to annoy someone at Total Wine, go in and say, can I have a case of blah, blah, blah? Because that means they're having to go up and find the case somewhere. And you're probably a customer sitting there thinking, why is it taking so long to find a case? I don't know if any of you had that experience, but if you go ask for a case of wine or spirits, that's what's going to happen to you. So that's a problem, a real life problem. A lot of resources, time, go into finding these cases. And one of the big issues is, they go up and they're trying to find the cases so quickly that they're moving everything around in all shifts. And you have a Sauvignon Blanc that finally ends up all the way down there when it should have been like right there because it just got shifted over. So we have tons of cameras at Total Wine all throughout our aisles and stores. And the question was, can we use the cameras in the store in order to identify where boxes are? So image processing, natural language processing, and saying, hey, we have a box. Here's the text on the box. Sometimes it just has the name. Sometimes we were doing color matching, saying, hey, this is the color, this is a color, very similar, should match. And it was a project that gets your team engaged, but also has business value. So when you think about project selection, outside of the normal context of here are the business objectives and how we're mapping to the business objectives, think about what's a project or a side project that you can do that engages the team or yourself in a new area, but also adds value because it can help in many different facets. Production support, one of my key pet peeves with running these teams. Production support, to me, comes down to two things. It's a reputation thing, and it's a retention of my team. So a reputation of, hey, this process is always failing. Why is it failing? You got to make sure that whatever you're putting into production is so robust that you're not going to be having those issues. Make sure the logging, the monitoring, spend that extra time that when you have a production issue come up, you know exactly how to tackle it. The second area of production support is around retention. The easiest way I've seen to lose talent to my data scientists, my machine learning engineers, is having them spend time on production support issues. They come in, they want to explore cool techniques of how do I build embeddings, how do I do image processing. They don't want to be spending time doing production support, and I don't blame them. So when you go and deploy these, make sure you have a good plan as to how to support and maintain these. I will be the first one to acknowledge, every time we've deployed something, we haven't had good answers to this. We've had teams dedicated to helping it. We've had, ML ops. We've had a handful of different configurations, and each one seems to have an issue. Just go into it with a plan and acknowledge what could be those issues. If you're handing it to another team, they may only be able to answer 1, 2, or 3 questions, but you need to have those questions documented well, and then everything else is going to fall on you. Kind of go eyes and open. Every team, every organization is different. Think through what are the gaps, what are the issues, and make sure that you're addressing those from a production support standpoint. The other thing I'd say with production support that I've seen come up a lot is timeline impacts. They come up, there's a bug or issue, we have to go fix that bug or issue. I talked about why are people asking the question, is a data science team needed? Timeline's one of them. This is an easy way to impact timeline that that a data scientist didn't plan for. The last is external communication. Market your work. I would say in general, data scientists are introverts. They don't like to market their work. The more you're in front of your stakeholders, the more you're talking about it, the more comfortable they're going to get, the more you're going to be in the forefront of their minds. It's not natural to do for some of us. It's not natural totally for me to do. But it's something I always have to think about, is to always be in their face talking about this so that they're learning and getting educated about it. With external communication, one big thing that has been coming up around the generative AI space is a lot of these tools are putting machine learning AI capabilities into non-technical people's hands. And we've had to start shifting our thinking from my team's perspective of, hey, we're going to build machine learning AI models that are key to our business that we know we want to own and maintain. But we also have to act as SMEs and say, hey, we're going to buy this capability, or we're going to put this capability in other people's hands and help educate them and say, hey, this is text summarization, or this is image generation, or whatever it may be, and help educate them and help guide them through that tool selection or that process selection, or help educate them as to where there may be pitfalls, is a key part of external communication now that I'm seeing with my teams. So doing all of this, the hope is that instead of asking the question, is the data science team needed? They're asking the question, where is the data science team? At the beginning of the year, all of my teams, or I have all my employees set goals. With those goals, we look at the business areas, supply chain, and say, hey, with supply chain, we want to improve 20% of the time series. Hey, with driving customer engagement, we want to drive Y incremental dollars in gross margin. very tangible, smart framework goals that we can set. One other way I'd like to measure how my team's doing is how many times are we getting asked the question, is the data science team needed versus where is the data science team? And that helps me understand, what is the acceptance of data science into the organization and where do I need to focus? About 2 or 3 weeks ago, someone came to me or put a meeting invite or email, I forget what it was, and they were like, hey, we have this problem where we order, in the alcohol industry, you order through a wholesaler. So the wholesaler, gives you deals. So they were saying, hey, we know our current inventory on hand, we know what's our projected demand, but they're giving us this deals and we don't know how to optimize purchasing what we should purchase. The deals could be, hey, buy 10 cases at $5 or buy 20 cases at $3, right? Some type of discounted quantity. Or you can buy 10 cases and get 11.3. There's all these different deal structures, and they say, hey, we think this is a data science question. Well, check mark them asking where is the data science team. They're engaging us, they're reaching out to us. We've done that education, we've done that outreach, and now they're talking to us and asking this question, rather asking, is the data science team needed? With where is the data science team, it is a spectrum for me. I get asked a lot of times, where is the data science team, or can the data science team help with this? And you kind of look at the problem and be like, that's not a data science problem, but I could help you. I mean, so you'll get a maturity, maturity graph as to people asking where is the data science team and how well are they asking, and are they hitting it spot on in that optimization problem, or are there gaps in their understanding of what data science is? Different organizations can be at different parts. Supply chain team at Total Wine will nail it every single time as to where's the data science team. When other teams pricing, store operations may not fully hit it and be saying, is the data science team needed? So there's that spectrum of questions, and to me it helps set a barometer as to how well is the adoption coming. I started with a AI-generated image, and here's another one. And when I did this, and if you look closely, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but a lot of the eyes are off, and it's an awful image. And the text was, the text I put in is somebody asking the question, where is the data science team? I guess they think this is the data science team, but you'd never find data scientists in ties, so I don't really know. And I kind of giggled to myself because I thought, if this is the image that the data science team's outputting, they're going to be coming to you of where's the data science team, but more in a mad manner than like a happy manner. So be careful of what you ask for or create. With that, that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions. So currently on my team, I have, so at Total Wine, data science is a wide spectrum. Machine learning AI people, we have 6 or 7, but then we have BI people that are creating like Looker dashboards or Power BI dashboards, and then we have people doing data science for insights and analytics. That's a much larger number, geared towards my team's more geared towards the machine learning AI type of work, and that's the 7 or so of us, 6 of us.
Hey, thanks for your talk. A couple quick questions. Not like I spend a ton of time at Total Wine or anything, but I noticed that, there's these wine ratings that come on the bottles sometimes from experts. Outside of Total Wine. And then I also see recommendations from people who work at Total Wine. Have you guys been even allowed to do any analysis of those ratings against any other metric that you have in terms of that might lead you to know how good those ratings are? And the same question with the recommendations that folks own as compared to the recommendations that you guys generate?
So the first half around, you know, is wine enthusiasts or any of these companies doing good ratings? We haven't done any. My team hasn't done any work into that. I know that the ratings are there. They exist. They are a selling mechanism for you know, companies, and you have to buy into certain things in order to get it and have certain levels of sales and et cetera. You know, other than high level stuff, I'm kind of blind on ratings. I would say, from the sales associate standpoint, when it says like, you know, Byron is a guy I know at the store, you know, Byron likes this wine, it's because he likes that wine. And I would say that the people in our stores, in order to wear those white shirts and those ties and be a wine professional, the training is absurd. Like, it's like the amount of education and knowledge that they have to do in order to be able to have that classification as a wine professional and be able to put it is vast. They also try all of the alcohol, like everything that comes through the door. They pretty much they've tasted vast majority of it, and those are their recommendations. Recommendations is an interesting thing because what I like, you may not like, right? I may really love this Pinot Noir, you may hate it, and you may love another one. So it's a very personal thing, but I would say they tend to be able to know and understand, here's an item that customers come in all the time for and repeatedly buy, and I like it, right? And to them, that's tends to be a home run winner, right?
Hey, great talk. Thanks for sharing. One question I have is, do you have a need for GIS specialist on your team? Is that something that adds anything to your analysis, or are you able to do everything that you need to do without that capability?
My team doesn't deal with it, and I'm not purview to it, but obviously a big aspect to Total Wine is what stores and what locations are they going to go into. It's kind of sometimes a big box store has to have their lease end or go out of business for Total Wine to be able to move into. But then there's also, you know, they have tons of demographic data and tons of information about income and, you know, what is purchasing behavior in particular areas. So they have all that data that's handled by the real estate team, and it's a combination of various different things as to deciding where to go.
Okay, I have a question. So you talked about the recommendations earlier on about using those models to make recommendations. Are you doing follow-up on those recommendations to ensure that if they were accurate, inaccurate, if the customers liked them, didn't like them, and then, you know, how are you tracking those changes?
Yeah, so like or not like is a very interesting topic because you can buy it once and like it, or you could, you know, it's hard to get feedback. What we tend to do is say, if you've purchased it twice, you tend to like it, right? It's a repeated behavior. Is that the best definition of liked? You know, who knows? We have people buy gifts all the time and it's the same bottle. Doesn't necessarily they like it, they're just giving it as a gift. From a feedback standpoint, we look at purchase behavior as, you know, kind of the metric. That's the metric for, you know, if they liked it or not. We also look at conversion, right? Are what we serving what they're buying? And if so, you know, that drives some stuff. So it's a combination or a mixture of the two. Yeah.
Can you talk about ML ops in your organization? Do you do any sort of tracking of your models with experiment tracking with tools such as, I don't know, like weights and biases or like ML flow or any of these tools?
Yeah, so the tracking we do is all in-house and would be deployed through Looker dashboards. So we're collecting all of the data, streaming it in, and then we can, you know, in the demand forecasting standpoint, you know, say here's the MAE, here's the MSE, here's the RMSE, whatever metric we want to look at, and look at it over time within the Looker dashboards. We haven't gone down a tool acquisition route. We're pretty invested into two main cloud providers, and with those cloud providers, we're trying to utilize what's available within them. Yep. Thank you, everyone.